This is big breaking news. The Secretary of War has just made a major announcement that they are now launching, quote, Operation Southern Spear. This is a new joint task force that is operated by Southcom for the U.S. military to be operating in the Caribbean and in our Western Hemisphere. So let's get into all the details here. You guys can see this was just announced by Pete Hegseth. It says here, President Trump ordered action and the Department of War is delivering. Today I'm announcing Operation, quote, Southern Spear, led by Joint Task Force Southern Spear and Southcom. This mission defends our homeland, removes narco-terrorists from our hemisphere, and secures our homeland from the drugs that are killing our people. The Western Hemisphere is America's neighborhood, and we will protect it. All right, so I think this marks a official announcement for these operations to soon begin, all right, because check this out as well, too. This just happened 2 days ago. Pentagon's largest aircraft carrier, the Ford, arrives in the Latin American region as tensions with Venezuela ramp up. So if you guys remember, the USS Gerald R Ford was ordered to Latin America weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago now, and it actually just arrived in the region. All right, it carries more than 4,000 sailors and dozens of tactical aircraft, and it's also the largest one in the world. All right, so there's a lot of resources for the U.S. military to be stationed outside of Venezuela and in the Caribbean, and they are going to potentially make a big move soon or use this as a leverage point to put maximum pressure on the Venezuela quasi-leader right now, Maduro, who technically didn't win their elections. It says here, quote, the enhanced U.S. force presence in the U.S. Southcom AOR will bolster U.S. capacity to detect, monitor, and disrupt illicit actors and activities that compromise the safety and prosperity of the United States homeland and our security in the Western Hemisphere. This is what Chief Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell said in a statement on Tuesday. Quote, these forces will enhance and augment existing capabilities to disrupt narcotics trafficking and degrade and dismantle transnational criminal organizations. So, lots of resources here, right? It's almost a liability to have so many resources here if they're not going to actually take action in some form. Okay, you can also see here, Trump briefed this week on options for military operations in Venezuela. It says President Trump was briefed this week for options for military operations inside Venezuela. Trump has yet to decide how to proceed, and he continues to weigh the risk and benefits of launching a scaled-up campaign. The president has previously voiced reservations about taking military action meant to oust Maduro, concerned about whether it would prove effective. While Wednesday's briefing included an updated set of options for President Trump to consider, it did not indicate that he's closer to making a decision, one of the people said. Another source familiar with the briefing said the options were similar to those that have been discussed within the Pentagon and some publicly reported in recent weeks. Okay, the CIA is actually operating within Venezuela right now. Trump has authorized them as well too. And they also announced, quote, Southern Spear, which primarily focuses on this part of the world. So it primarily focuses on the Caribbean, Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and the Pacific approaches as well too. Recent U.S. deployments, such as the USS Gerald R Ford Carrier Strike Group to Puerto Rico and the USS Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Groups with the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit, signals readiness for rapid response. All right, so there's a lot of soldiers there. There's a lot of different teams there. This is massive, a massive buildup. Also, this is part of the operations as well too, unmanned and robotic systems, integrations of drones, unmanned surface vessels, and autonomous air systems for surveillance and interdiction. Sail Drone is expanding its USV fleet in the region to support detection of illicit trafficking. All right. Also, manned operators like the P-8 Poseidon aircraft for intelligence, the MQ-9 Reaper drones, SEAL insertions as well too, and targeted strikes on go-fast boats. And there's been at least seven lethal engagements since August 2025 on these boats. It says the scale of this operation includes over 10,000 U.S. personnel already in theater, with potential for expanded Marine and Air Force roles, not framed as a full invasion, but a full spectrum of actions, including special operation raids. So this is huge, right? I don't know if we've seen anything like this in decades, honestly. And it says here that this is also part of a broader strategy as well too, to counter, quote, Russian and Chinese influence in the region as well. And certain Chinese producers have actually even been linked to these base materials for these illicit drugs that are entering the United States. It's also an aim to stabilize oil markets, reduce migration, and boost trade, potentially paving the way for the new leader, Machado, who technically won the election in Venezuela but has not taken power. So it's all these things, okay? Venezuela has some of the largest oil reserves in the world, okay? So that's definitely part of it. The United States wants to use Venezuelan oil instead of using our own oil, and it's a trading partner that's very close. Very close. They're right there, and they have very rich oil reserves. It could be a win-win for both countries. Okay, it's not like Venezuela is like thriving economically. If you remember, actually, before they kind of collapse into this narco state, they actually experienced hyperinflation in around like 2014. If you remember, Venezuela is kind of the place where people would reference, hyperinflation to, okay, because their currency collapsed, and we saw massive discrepancies in the population where there were super wealthy people and then driving Lamborghinis and eating the best food, and then 75-80% of the population though was standing in food lines trying to get bread for their family all day long, are stretched around the block, and a lot of the people, by the time they got to the front of the line, there was nothing even left. Okay, so that's kind of what happened there the past 10 years. They had a massive currency hyperinflation situation, and then they kind of collapsed into this narco state in the aftermath of it. But they really should be one of our biggest trading partners in this part of the world, in South America, right? They really should be. And I don't know what they're gonna do, but I think they're putting maximum pressure on Maduro right now, right? Because there's no other reason that they would be sending all of these different groups to this region. All right, so that's what's going on. All right, you can also see here, this is a warning that was issued by Marco Rubio today as well. Let's listen to this really quick.
To provide them any help they want. Obviously they don't want us we're not going to take unilateral action or go in and send American forces into Mexico, but we can help them with equipment, with training, with intelligence sharing, with all kinds of things that we could do if they ask for it. They got to ask for it. But look, you asked about one mayor. It's not just, there's been other mayors. There's been journalists. There's been politicians. There's been judges. These cartels are very powerful. One of the things that no one is discussing enough is the rise of these transnational terrorist organizations. And just because they're not ideologically driven does not mean they're not terrorists. You don't have to be ideological to be a terrorist. And they're terrorists because they possess, in many cases, more weapons, better training, better intelligence, and more capabilities than nation states do. In the case of Ecuador, these terrorist organizations are threatening the Ecuadorian state. I mean, planning IDFs and attacking planning IEDs and attacking the presidential convoy. In Mexico, there are areas of the country that are frankly run by and governed by these cartels are more powerful than local law enforcement or even the national forces are. So these are a concern throughout the hemisphere. In the case of Haiti, the Haitian problem is not with some ideological movement. The Haitian problem is with armed gangs that in many cases are stronger and more capable than the Haitian forces are to be able to stand up against them.
All right, so you heard that there. He is warning that some of these states, or some of these countries, in Central America, South America, even Mexico, do have these groups that can challenge the governments, okay? And they have incredible influence, and they've been causing chaos in certain places where you'll see, he was alluding to it, how there's officials, mayors, politicians that are just taken out if they don't play ball with these organizations. It's very dangerous. It's very scary. And it's right there south of our country. It's not far away. He was saying that the United States would not enter Mexico militarily and do operations unless they ask for it, but he hasn't said that for any other country. I think, Mexico just gets that respect because they are right on our southern border. They're a big trading partner. We do have agreements with them, previously, like things like NAFTA and the new trade agreement between Canada, US, and Mexico as well. That was passed a few years ago. It's a little bit different with Mexico. But these smaller countries, I really think that we could already be operating in some of them. He said Ecuador. He was bringing up how the president there has been targeted with IED devices, the presidential convoy from these groups. So the pressure's on, and it's not, it's one of these things where we could say, hey, it's not our country, we shouldn't really be involved. But what are we going to do? Allow all of these countries that are right south of the US, and we border them with land, okay? We don't directly border them, but we share a land mass with them, okay? There's no ocean separating us. And this is going to cause more destabilization in these countries, which then causes more people to leave and flee to the United States, okay, which then causes social services, things like that, to be overwhelmed here. All right, we saw this the past 4 years, the crisis that we saw at the border, and a big part of it is because a lot of these countries are collapsing into chaos, so people are mass fleeing, okay? And we could say, hey, this isn't our country, but at the same time, it directly affects the United States. It really does. It's not like it's all the way on the other side of the world where we really don't have justification. These things are going to directly affect us one way or another, and if these groups directly capture these governments, then that's who we're dealing with as well too, right? And then they have military resources they're capturing, natural resources, all these things that are up for grabs when these groups capture these countries. And that's kind of at the point where they're at, some of them, where they're kind of on the edge to be overtaken. So we could make a justification for some countries potentially for our military to enter. I'm not a huge fan, all right? I'm not a big fan of this, but at the same time, I see the writing on the wall. This is something that should have been handled a decade ago. Like I said, when Venezuela initially collapsed, we should have been in there and been the ones to have influence in the collapse. We didn't cause their economic collapse, but we could have been the ones to kind of pick up the pieces. But China was there and Russia was there. They were the ones to bail them out and provided support. So now they have influence there, and they have been building influence in Central and South America heavily, especially over the past decade. And that's because there's kind of a power vacuum there. Okay, these countries are destabilizing. A lot of them are in economic trouble. Argentina's in major economic turmoil right now. Okay, a lot of them are facing grave economic situations. And in the aftermath of these things, we could see these groups take over. Okay, and then we could see more people flood into the United States. So something needs to be done. All right, and they're going to do something. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. I will keep you guys updated, but just be prepared, be ready. We could potentially even see like retaliations from some of these groups because some of them are embedded into the United States, deep in the United States. Some of these big cities, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, they are heavily embedded in, and they have members there, and they could be activated. They're already putting out hits and things like that for federal agents, I reported on just a few days ago. So just be prepared, be ready, be stocked up just in case, right? For whatever it is, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's an earthquake, CME, a solar flare, a flood, hurricane, a war. Okay, whatever it is, just be prepared, be stocked up, be ready. I hope you guys have big blessings for your life and your family, and I hope you have a big old blessed day.